Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Frightening Fiction. It's Freaky Informer, and today I'm going to be reading you The Coin by DaytimeDeity on Reddit. Sit back, relax, and take in these words because this story is amazing. 5 years ago, I moved into a rental with my friend Maisie. Maisie and I had met in our first year of college. We lived on the same dorm floor. After knowing each other for a couple of years, we decided to look for a home close enough to our university without being right on campus. Both of us really liked the idea of moving somewhere more rural with lots of privacy. We both had a fascination with nature and a distaste for most people. After several weeks of scouring listings, we finally found the one. It was only about 20 minutes from campus, but it was surrounded by forest. It had a lovely screened porch on the front, complete with a handmade swing. The monthly rent was very doable for us, and we contacted the property owner immediately. She was a sweet older woman named Tabitha. Tabitha and her husband had been renting the house out on and off for 15 years. We met up with them and they seemed genuinely kind and welcoming, so we agreed to rent the house. Maisie and I were completely moved in within the next 2 weeks. It was great. We didn't have the noise of the bustling streets on campus, the spring air smelled like wildflowers, and watching the rain from the porch is one of the most relaxing things to do after class. After a month of living there, Maisie came home with a surprise. She'd bought a metal detector. Her plan was for us to take it out into the surrounding woods and see if we could find any lost treasures, as she called them. We set out the next morning. At first we didn't find anything too exciting. Some old bottle caps and soda can tabs mostly. A time or two we dug up a nail. Just as we were about to head back to the house, Maisie shouted to me, "This is going to be something good," she yelled, pointing to the spot just under the beeping machine. "This spot feels lucky." I dug at the dirt for a bit until we found what looked like a coin. It was silver coloured and roughly the size of a 50-cent piece. Maisie picked it up. "Huh," she said. "The markings must have worn off." She turned it over in her hand and made a face. "Ew, what is that?" I looked at the coin in her palm. On one of its faces, there was a symbol drawn in some sort of reddish dried sludge. It looked almost like an eye. While it was gross, we both figured we could wash the coin clean back home. We took it back, and Maisie went to work at the bathroom sink. A while later, she came back with the freshly cleaned coin. "What is it?" I asked her. She pursed her lips. "Not sure. It looks like any markings or engravings kinda eroded. Who knows how long that thing was in the dirt?" Maisie was much more excited about her find than I was, so I relented to let her keep the coin in her room. She kept it in her jewellery box. We were pretty tired from our day of treasure hunting, so we cooked some frozen pizzas in the oven and spent the rest of the evening binge-watching some of our favourite reality shows. Trouble started the following morning. We both had classes around 9 a.m, so we decided together to get breakfast through a drive-thru on the way. To make it on time, we'd leave at 8:15. It was past 8 and I hadn't seen her come out of her bedroom, so I got worried that she slept through her alarm. I walked into her room expecting her to be still, tucked in bed. She wasn't. Instead, she was still wearing pajamas, and she was standing in front of the jewellery box with the coin in her hand, just staring at it. She didn't even notice me come in. When I said her name, she didn't even move. I had to walk over and gently shake her shoulder to get her to look at me. "What are you doing?" I said. "We have to leave in less than 10 minutes. Get dressed." Maisie shook her head like she was coming out of a daze and furrowed her brow. "Sorry, I was just looking at it and I guess I lost track of time," she mumbled. After that, she got dressed. Luckily, we still made it to class on time. That whole day, though, she kept bringing up the coin. When we were together, she rattled on about it. When we were in different classes, she spammed me with texts. Even some of our mutual friends complained to me that they couldn't get her to talk about anything else. When we got home that afternoon, she disappeared into her bedroom. It was a bit odd, but I had a lot of assignments to work on, and I was honestly a bit tired of her by that point, so I went to my room too. After finishing my homework, I went out into the kitchen. The lights were off. Maisie hadn't come out and it was her night to cook dinner. I was annoyed, so I barged into her room. This time, she had her bedroom light off and she was sitting at her desk. A single candle was lit in front of her and she was using the flame to illuminate the coin in her hands. She was humming under her breath as she turned the coin over and over, transfixed. "Maisie?" I whispered. She jerked in my direction and I froze. The candlelight made it look like there was a strange reddish glow to her brown eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tense. "It's your turn to make dinner," I said. Before I could even take another breath, she'd crossed the room and into my personal space. "Can't you see I'm busy?" she snarled. "Get out." I backed up and she slammed the door in my face. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a few minutes trying to process what happened. Maisie wasn't the type to lose her temper. Sure, she got mad like everyone else, but she tended to be more passive-aggressive. She never yelled. Something must have really upset her. I ended up making some pasta for dinner. I put the leftovers in the fridge with a note saying Maisie could have them if she wanted, and then I went to bed. The next morning, I got up and ready for class. Maisie had the day off, so I figured she was still asleep. When I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, I saw the leftover pasta still sitting on the shelf. Maisie probably hadn't left her room last night. I started to get worried. I thought maybe she'd gotten some bad news about a family member or was extra stressed about midterms coming up. That day, while I was in class, I decided I would plan something relaxing for us to do that night. I made some reservations for Maisie's favourite restaurant and ordered tickets online for a new movie she'd mentioned wanting to see. When I got home later that night, I saw that the living room light was on. Maisie had come out during the day, but when I checked, I still saw the leftovers inside the fridge. Maisie was never the type to skip meals, and that scared me. I made my way down the hallway to her bedroom. Halfway there, I stepped on something cold and squishy. I looked at the bottom of my sock and saw something pinkish stuck to it. I grimaced and flicked it off. When I got to her room, though, I saw that the door was ajar. I was relieved that it wasn't locked this time. I gently pushed it aside. All the lights were off, so I turned on my phone flashlight. What I saw that day is still burned into my memory. Maisie sat hunched over in her bed, wearing only a tank top and pajama shorts. Her hair was unbrushed and a mess. There were scarlet stains all over her bed. I followed the stains up towards her body and gagged. Maisie had a package of raw ground beef ripped open on the bed. She was scooping it into her mouth with her bare hands. She ate like a starved animal, chewing loudly with bits of the meat falling from her open mouth to land between her legs. I involuntarily let out a startled squeak. Maisie's head shot up and she glared at me. My knees faltered when I saw her eyes glowing a deep ruby. She moved on all fours and actually growled at me. My feet started working again and I took off running for the front door, and I could hear her at my heels. I managed to get outside and made a beeline for my car. I tried the handle, but it was locked. I'd left my keys inside, my purse on the kitchen counter. I cursed and turned around, prepared to run a different direction, but came face to face with Maisie. She was taller than she'd been a day ago, close to 7 feet. Her eyes were wider, and even in the dark still shone crimson. She opened her mouth and ran her tongue over her lips. Her teeth were all jagged and sharp. She wrapped her right hand around my throat and smirked. "You have 2 options," she said. Her voice was deeper and raspy. I somehow felt each of her words vibrate down the hand she had on my neck. "You can join me and know this power?" Maisie leaned forward and pressed her face to my hair, sniffing me. "Or I can make this simple and devour you now." "Maisie," I started, but she tightened her grip on my throat, choking me. "What is your choice?" I shook my head and tried to break free, grabbing at her arm. She suddenly released me and banged a fist on my car, leaving a dent in the hood. "Wrong answer," she snarled. My legs gave way and I slid down to the ground, trembling. I scrambled to crawl beneath my car. She grabbed both of my legs and dragged me out. I flipped onto my back and started kicking wildly. She paid no mind, instead looming over me. Bloody drool dripped from her lips and landed on my forehead. Maisie opened her mouth wide, aiming to bite into my throat. I braced myself for the pain when a sudden noise came from the pitch-black forest. It was a guttural, feral cry. It echoed and carried through the trees and sent a chill up my spine. My adrenaline spiked enough that I felt dizzy. Maisie let me go and took a step back, looking in the direction of the sound. My vision got fuzzier as I watched her lope off past the tree line. Then it all went black. I came to the next morning, still lying next to my car. I went inside and cleaned myself up in the bathroom. I knew I had to move out. I didn't want to risk staying too long. I spent that day packing up both mine and Maisie's things up in boxes. I rented a hotel room for a week and stayed there at night. I let Tabitha know that I was leaving early. I cleaned up as best as I could and forfeited the security deposit for what I couldn't fix. Over the next few days, I came up with a story. I told everyone that Maisie had a breakdown and ran away to join a cult, and that I didn't know how to contact her. I donated her belongings to some thrift stores and found myself an apartment on the edge of campus. I spent a lot of time trying to process what had changed Maisie into that monster. I determined that it all started when she found the coin in the ground. I was glad I hadn't handled it myself or had anything to do with it. Who knows what would have happened if I did? It wasn't until several weeks later, when the nightmares began to subside, that I realized the coin had been in Maisie's jewellery box when I donated it. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to say a massive thank you to DaytimeDeity for letting me use their story. Today's charity was chosen by the writer and can be found in the description. There's also a related petition, so if you can sign or donate, please do. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, stay freaky, stay informed. It may save your life.